Chief of the Year needs to stand front and center.
That's right. Okay. First off, I want to thank you all for coming, folks with the media, and then I want to thank Congressman Coleman and General Coleman for choosing Shepherdsville, Bullitt County, to be the host of this law enforcement roundtable. I'm Walt Scholler. I'm blessed to be the sheriff of Bullitt County, which is the county that Shepherdsville is the seat of. And we've had law enforcement leaders from across the state, all four corners of the state here for the last hour or so, discussing the problems that we've got throughout the state. And it's been reiterated over and over that the problems that we have in Fulton County and the problems that we have in Pike County at the two opposite ends of the state, they are problems that we all share. Criminals are not paying attention to the county lines unless it benefits them. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. And this last hour has shown that repeatedly over the years, and I've been doing this since 1980, is when I went to work for the county attorney's office here in Bullitt County 45 years ago. But repeatedly, thank God, in the last few years, when we have problems, there's two folks we can go to, and one is General Coleman, the other is Congressman Comer. And we want to thank you all very, very much for being here today.
Well, Sheriff, I'm grateful for the kind words and grateful for these lawmen on my left and on my right. They're assembled here, as I said earlier during our roundtable, not because they represent the Commonwealth geographically, which they do. They're assembled here because of the deep respect I have for many of them. I've worked with many of them as an FBI agent, as a prosecutor, federal prosecutor, now the Attorney General. And I'm honored to spend any time with them and Congressman Comer. You know, Sheriff Scholler, your partnership and your hospitality are both extraordinary. Thank you so much. You know, it might sound self-evident, but law enforcement is facing many unique and evolving challenges. You know, from the violence we're seeing just up the road in Louisville, and increasing amounts, oftentimes involving juveniles, to foreign drug cartels that are the source of every bit of the poison that's killing Kentuckians, 1,400 last year, 2,000 the year before, and even the online predators that we're seeing growing, those that target our kids and our grandparents and our parents in using technology, leveraging that for ill. And we got to run faster. We must run faster. We must tear down silos, these bureaucratic silos that unnecessarily limit our ability in law enforcement to protect Kentuckians, protect Americans. You know, in our office, the Office of the Attorney General, the notion is called zealous collaboration. Zealous collaboration is what we call it. It's not just a line on our challenge coins. It can be and is oftentimes a big change for law enforcement. We're designed to operate very effectively in our own jurisdictions, but the nature of the threat is growing, it's evolving. And what these men and women do in law enforcement so well is you go to the threat. Oftentimes the biggest limiting factor on our badge, and we've talked about many of them around this table, what the challenges are that limit our ability to effectively serve Kentuckians as with the degree of efficacy we'd like. Oftentimes the biggest limiting factor is what it says on our badge. We just haven't collaborated as well in our history, but that's changing. You know, for the last hour, we talked about zealous collaboration, not just words from a podium, but how we more effectively collaborate, the need for help from Washington, D.C., the need for assistance from Frankfurt. That's why it's so important to get leaders like this together, to have these type conversations. You know, I'm proud of the effort, the role our office, the Office of the Attorney General, has played. Thanks to the $15 million from our General Assembly, we have closed that gap of Kentucky's troopers and deputies and officers who didn't have body armor or whose body armor was expired. We have closed that gap from 20% to 1%. Over 2,000 vests have gone out to Kentucky's lawmen and women. That includes 6 agencies right here in Bullitt County, including Sheriff Scholler, your own sheriff's office. We're also in the process, and we talked about this a moment ago, we're also in the process of standing up a statewide peer support system for the men and women in law enforcement. We have to care and focus on our officers, our troopers, our deputies' mental health, as well as our physical health. We ask a lot of these professionals. The weight of the badge is a heavy one. But we have to have a program statewide that helps mitigate the threat to their mental health, and I'm looking forward to an announcement in the very near term from a podium like this to share more about that effort statewide. Of course, we're having these conversations about Kentucky law enforcement with a man who is perfectly positioned to help us. Today was not, again, about getting professionals together. It was about getting these professionals together with someone who can be of assistance, someone who, and I'll say this without any hesitation, is one of the most influential Kentuckians who walked the halls in Washington, D.C. Not only does he very effectively leverage that podium, that gavel of the House Oversight Committee, one of the most significant and powerful committees in our legislature, in our Congress, but he has the ear of the President of the United States, both very significant positions to help us address the problems that were talked about around this table. Just this week, for example, Congressman Coleman engaged and supported the President in his effort to try to mitigate the violence that we're seeing growing in Washington, D.C. Kentucky law enforcement, those that these men and women serve will be out there on the streets tonight long after we're safely in our beds. I want every officer, every deputy, every trooper to know who's out there tonight that we're going to have their backs. Those aren't just happy talk words from a podium like this. We're going to take what was discussed today and carry it forward. I know that the gentleman who'll be coming up to this podium is going to leverage that for their good. And so with that, it's a privilege to call up Congressman Coleman.
Well, thank you, General, and thank you for getting this group together. This has been very informative to me. I don't think it's any secret with what we saw yesterday in Washington, D.C. with the President's federalization of the Washington, D.C. police force that the President as well as Congress is serious about cracking down on the crime crisis we have, this crime crisis that's overwhelmingly in the larger cities in the United States. But at the core of this is ensuring that we back these guys on the front line here. And that's twofold. First of all, it's to ensure they have adequate funding. And as I said earlier, this movement to defund the police, I think, is out of style now. I don't think the liberals are going to be using that punchline anymore. There's a direct correlation between police funding and crime. There's a direct correlation between prosecuting criminals and crime. So what we want to see in Washington now, when we go back in September, my committee that General Coleman mentioned, the House Oversight Committee, we're going to be having the big hearing with the Washington, D.C. police chief. We're going to have the Washington, D.C. district attorney as hopefully the mayor. We're going to be talking about how we can solve this problem. We don't want Washington, D.C. to have a National Guard presence very long. But what we see in Washington, D.C., I've learned today, we're seeing in places like Louisville and other places, it's a huge increase in juvenile criminals activity. What we're seeing in many states, especially in Washington, D.C., it's juveniles aren't being prosecuted for crimes for various reasons, the way the criminal justice system's set up, the way the laws are in some of these communities, the way the attitudes are with some of the judges and prosecutors in some of these cities. So what we're seeing is an increase in criminals encouraging young people, encouraging juveniles to commit crimes. And that's a loophole in the system that's going to have to be closed. So today I want to thank all the men and women that were here, not just for your service, but for this discussion today. I'm going to take it back to Washington. I'm going to take it back to the President, because when you look at the drug crisis, and I appreciate the new pills that were exhibited today that come out of Northern Kentucky. So many times the first area in the state where new drugs enter is in that Northern Kentucky area coming down from Ohio. But we've got a president that has secured the border. That was the first phase. in trying to crack down on fentanyl and other drugs that were crossing the border. The second phase now we're entering is going after the cartels. And you're going to hear President Trump talk a lot more about that. That's going to be a topic of discussion in Congress and with the attorneys general around the United States that are serious about cracking down on crime. So again, I want to thank you for the discussion today. It was very informative, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. I'll turn it back over to General.
Thank you, Congressman. Happy to address any questions that you happen to have.
So you discussed, funding. I'm sure funding is a big issue for all of your departments. How much do you rely on federal funding? Is that a big part at all of your budgets?
It's currently not
Yeah.
a particularly big amount of our funding right now.
Yeah.
We would love to see it increase, but we receive funding through HIDA that helps with our agency, but primarily the funding that we get through the HIDA grants is utilized for one detective that we have assigned to the Greater Hardin County Drug Task Force.
Okay, and then when it comes to HIDA, has that funding been kind of level with the new administration?
Since we were designated a HIDA county approximately 18 months ago, and once Bullitt County became a HIDA county, that funding has not changed from that time.
So the question, if we can go back to and I appreciate Sheriff Scholler, and we want to, let's zoom out from here in Bullitt County to the macro. Burn JAG, and we're not going to be heavy into acronyms, but one of the primary lifeblood sources of resources for proactive narcotics investigations of the task forces that we see that are non-HIDA, that's high intensity drug trafficking area. We are largely part of the Appalachia HIDA, it's a 4-state HIDA. The Burn JAG funding that is comes through the U.S. Department of Justice is lifeblood for our non-HIDA drug task forces. Tommy Loving, our president of the Kentucky Narcotics Officers Association, is here with me. He also runs the Warren County Bowling Green Drug Task Force. Shared with us today that HIDA funding has been relatively flat for the last half decade. Burn JAG funding has been flat since 2012. A theme today across all of the speakers was how the nature of crime that we're seeing is becoming more international. It's becoming more technologically based. The nature of the threats are metastasizing. All of the poison we're seeing coming in from Kentucky is international by its nature. It comes from the Mexican drug cartels. So you're seeing law enforcement agencies try to do more with less. And so that was a through line of our discussion today, is the need for looking at how we police, looking at how we fund law enforcement agencies, because there is no corner of this Commonwealth that's not a border county, that's not a border state. All of this poison is international. So funding was a very important through line, both HIDA funding and Burn JAG funding.
Congressman Comer, I was wondering if you could expand on your comments about the move in D.C. We saw from the president this week. Do you think that should be replicated in Kentucky, or has potential to?
Well, hopefully not. I think that what you see here, we have the best and the brightest in law enforcement in the state. Louisville's a different deal. I think we've got a great Metro Council, and I think we've got a mayor that's serious about cracking down on crime. It's many times it's the attitude of the prosecutors and the judges. People have to be held accountable for crimes that are being committed. In Washington, D.C., I'm very close with the mayor. My committee has legislative jurisdiction over Washington, D.C., so we work closely with the mayor and the police chief and people in Washington. And what I found is you have such a liberal Metro D.C. council there, and you have prosecutors and judges that are just so lenient. They've taken criminal justice reform so far to the extreme that the criminals they're never held accountable in Washington, D.C. We hear the story of the former police chief said they arrested a guy for carjacking early one morning, and they took him in, and later that night they arrested him again in another part of town for carjacking another car. They let him out, and that has to stop. And I think one of the things you're going to see also in Washington D.C. is all of the employees that I have in Washington D.C. they're scattered out all over the city. They've been telling me for weeks, they look out the window at all hours of the night, there are all these teenage boys running around, spray painting, stealing, breaking things, just creating havoc, and nothing is done about it. Last night, there was none of that from all accounts from my employees in Washington D.C. They had a military presence all over the city. And I don't want to see that happen. I want these cities to take crime seriously. We have to support our law enforcement, number one. And number two, we have to prosecute criminals and hold them accountable for bad behavior. And I think that sends a message, and that will solve the problem. I don't want to see what's happening in Washington replicated to other cities. But if these other cities don't get serious about it, then it probably will be. And the president said that.
Attorney General Coleman, is your office going to be part of any investigation with the allegations that former employees with the Kentucky Department of Transportation were being paid under the table to provide driver's license to undocumented immigrants?
Oh, Hannah, I appreciate the question. Its conduct, as shared by the whistleblower, has been very concerning that the media has reported on in the last few days. It's not necessarily common that our office comments on ongoing investigations, but the nature of this particular investigation is a bit different. So we have been, the Office of the Attorney General has been collaborating with the Kentucky State Police and our federal partners for some time now on that investigation. In fact, it's a several month-long investigation. It's been ongoing since long before the media reports of the last couple of days. So that is a very ongoing, very robust investigation at present.
And then Governor Beshear has joined all these different national lawsuits with other attorney generals, presuming that he hasn't worked with your office on those. Wondering what your response is to that, and if that creates any impact on your office, any extra work, what does that sort of look like?
Well, zealous collaboration is an offer that's open across the Commonwealth. Our governor has not necessarily taken me up on that as much as I would have liked. In terms of litigation, the governor does not have the legal authority to sue on behalf of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. As you'll see, he's been very careful to sue as the governor on behalf of his office or on behalf of a specific state agency. It is and will be concerning if the governor were to purport to represent the Commonwealth. And I would like to, not as a matter of civics, but maybe as a matter of political science, encourage all of your media outlets as you're reporting on the governor's lawsuits. You know, the governor is suing as on behalf of his office, on behalf of his administration. It's an important distinction under our system. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth, our General Assembly, and our Constitution has vested the authority to sue on behalf of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We're watching what the governor does very carefully, and we'll act accordingly.
Hi, I wanted to ask you, Attorney General, if there's any interest in connecting with schools in light of these rising criminal rates. Obviously, there's ample evidence that low school ratings correlate with higher crime, and here in Kentucky, we're around the 46th or so. So is there any interest in working on the school district, either within the law enforcement capacity or outside of it, to work on that?
Well, there's a great deal of engagement between those leaders on my left and my right in their local schools. Many of these sheriffs are in charge of the school resource officer program, not only mandated by state law, but many of these agencies have been protecting schools with school resource officers long before it was required by Frankfurt. I would push back a little on the premise of your question. We've never stopped engaging with schools, whether it is protecting schools with school resource officers, whether it's protecting athletic events, whether it is developing information to protect kids from that poison that we know that one pill can kill. In fact, our office is standing up a statewide drug prevention effort, working with schools, the Better Without It effort. That's taking opioid settlement dollars and doing partnerships with the University of Kentucky, U of L, and using the social media dynamics, the influencers, to try to keep kids off this poison that's killing so many of our kids. So I would say that collaboration has never stopped and will continue robustly. Many of our social media matters, our lawsuit versus TikTok, those algorithms that are going after our kids, those are specifically targeted to go after school-age kids. And so much of our civil litigation is to protect kids. So now that collaboration and that focus on protecting our kids has never stopped.
In general, our last two questions today will come from Wave 3 News.
Hey, how long has Margaret's Movers been on your office's radar?
We've been taking a look at that for some time now, resulting in a very successfully temporary restraining order that we received yesterday. I mean, this is a company that not only this result driven by multiple consumer complaints, this is driven by the fact that this is an entity that didn't have the appropriate state license since 2015. We've certainly not been aware of it since then, but this is a good result. We've stopped this entity from collecting money, stopped this entity from operating, frozen it in place. Very disappointingly, we issued civil investigative demands some time ago to this entity to try to gain more information, and they were not responsive to our CIDs, to our civil investigative demands. So I applaud yesterday's TRO, which is going to allow us to keep this company from further victimizing Kentuckians.
Since they didn't have the license since 2015, how are they even operating, the last 10 years supposedly?
Unlawfully.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, General.
I just want to say that my wife